Alright, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a video on Apex once again. Today's video we're going to be going over a lot of the Ask Me Anything questions on the Reddit posts that the developers of Apex done. And we're going to see a kind of very common pattern kind of emerge between all these messages and the replies of the developers. So yeah, let's get started. So the first question here was, for how long are you planning to force metas by overbuffing certain characters, and for how long will these endure not being able to shoot or fighting any squad in the lobby because those legends have a 100% pick rate in some ranks and 50% everywhere else? I definitely think this question is a little bit exaggerated here because some characters aren't just 100% pick rate. It's impossible to be that. But maybe for LGS, I mean, technically, you could have an 100% pick rate for every single squad, but I get where he's coming from here. So, the Respawn developer said, so far, we've been enjoying how the recent balance change shakeups have been shifting the meta pretty drastically. It's kept seasons feeling fresh and interesting, but we're also aware the stickier legends that are staying at the top. Our goal is to have a healthy rotation of legends that are able to be strong and breathe some new levels of fun into them, but we don't want them to remain for too long or become frustrating either. In addition to season changes, you've likely seen how we've increased the frequency of balance changes outside the usual season and mid-season patches, and we're hoping to keep that up, keep that practice going forward, so we can keep on top of the problems as they come up. Now, this actually got 17 downvotes, so however the hell the system works on Reddit. So this was actually seen as very negative, but I actually see this as really, really good. It kind of brings up two major points in the new direction that Respawn's going that I think are both really, really good. First of all, is giving new characters a little bit of light in them and kind of keeping them at the top for a long time, but just slowly nerfing them before they actually give them the massive hammer, like what they've done to Ballistic recently, where they just kind of knock them all the way back down. Now, I think this is a nice way to do it. I don't really feel like knocking characters down that quickly, though, is a great way to do it. But if it's necessary, then obviously they do have to do that. But I would way rather prefer if they just slowly nerf characters, slowly, until they just gradually get outside the meta, just very slowly, so that people start to catch on, right? Okay, this character's getting a little bit weaker now. Oh, another week goes by. This character's getting even weaker. And I think just naturally people will then start to think about other options. Me and my friend who, we play Ballistic and Alter, we no longer do that anymore because Ballistic's got nerfed to the ground. Alter's still viable though, I feel. We basically had to do that when the Watson and Vantage changes came through, because we were thinking, like, is Watson actually viable for this squad? But obviously Alter was still too much of a necessity for us, so we felt like Watson wasn't as good. But obviously if they kept doing the Watson buffs and the Watson buffs and the Watson buffs and then the Alter nerfs and the Alter nerfs over a series of patches, over a series of weeks, then that would obviously change my perception, and I would probably try and play someone like Watson. And that's what I love, is that they're mentioning here that it's not just that, rotating characters in and out, but it's doing it very quickly over the series of patches, not just at the start of the season or the mid-season where there's just a massive dump of just loads of legend changes in them two different points of the season. It's throughout the entirety of the season, multiple times. Now, this developer also goes on to explain this a little further, saying this as well: thank you so much for your questions. Generally, we would love for every legend to be just as viable as another, and that was our approach to balancing for a long time, to try and push and pull legends to be all balanced perfectly. However, we found that approach was also leading to more stale legend metas that didn't shake up your core experience with the game over time. So we started to take larger swings at what you saw with the legend class changes, and we also saw bolder. We also got bolder with those as we went. So yeah, I want to add a little bit of history to this. Obviously, at the start of the game, we obviously got a few patches. At the start of the game, obviously, we had legends like Pathfinder and Wraith that were like extremely OP at the start. So of course, you're going to have them characters that kind of just need to get nerfed, and obviously other characters that need to get buffed. And so we eventually got through that kind of the difficult period. And then it kind of got a bit stale. I would say from like season 10 to season 15-ish, that was a bit boring because not many patches actually had many legend changes. And then we had season 16. This one obviously added the legend class system, which I think completely revolutionized the game and made it a lot more fun and a lot more that you had to actually think about what you were going to do, who you're going to pick as part of your squad. Then obviously in Season 20 we got the perk system for every character as well. So these little things gave ordinary characters, let's say like, I don't know, like 𝗏𝗁𝘁. 𝗏𝗁𝘁 really hasn't had much limelight for a while, like. So characters like 𝗏𝗁𝘁 just never really had any buffs, never really had any nerfs, because he never really was either too OP or not OP enough. He was kind of like a weird character. And so characters like that just never really have anything go for them, just kind of sat there until these seasons came along, and then you got these extra perks, and you got these, character perks and all that other stuff. So that's why they're basically saying here is that they had the previous system where it was just, let's make everyone the same, and so all the characters that were balanced, like Bangalore and I would say probably 𝗏𝗁𝘁 at the time as well, they just really had nothing changed with them, and so everyone else was having changes. And so it definitely seems like they are taking the kind of Overwatch approach where they are doing very, very rapid and regular patches that just completely shake up the meta and make it so you have to stay on top of your game and analysing the meta in order to get the best composition for your squad. And I like that because it rewards people who actually pay attention and, are alert in the game and know, are more enjoying the game. They get the benefits of it. So then, most recently, we were looking to try and take those learnings from class changes and target more specific legends, especially those that may have not had much time in the sun, and take a look at to see how we could position them better in the current state of the game, as well as opening up possible new vectors for those legends to counter those at the top, just like we saw with this split with the 𝗏𝘁𝑚 new fence changes. So I'd say look forward to seeing more of your favourite legends seeing some special attention given to them soon. So on this note, obviously Watson is kind of like the anti-movement character they're trying to say right now, because obviously if you try to go in a fence or if you try to open a door, then your movement abilities are then locked. I get where they're coming from here, but it doesn't exactly lock them, if you know what I mean. Like, you can still use them in like a few seconds afterwards. So I get what they're trying to say here, but they definitely need to have more buffs in other aspects. You can't just be a full anti-movement character. I feel like that's my main issue with this. Potentially why some of these things might have got some downvotes maybe, because I feel like the controller characters, they really have to be good at bunkering down, and some of these characters are just not good at that. And so I have made a concept video the other day on how to actually buff all the controller characters, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But yeah, they really need to have a look at how to buff each of these characters to actually make it so they can bunker down and make sure that they don't die in a building. They shouldn't be dying in a building, basically. And the breaching characters should only really breach teams that don't have a controller character. That should be the main ethos behind the kind of game right now. The controller characters need to have their meta right now. And if you want to defend a building, have a controller character in your team, and you should be able to do that very easily. I feel like characters like Crypto and Sparrow that can just easily destroy all your traps should definitely get nerfed in that regard if they want to go towards this meta. But of course, everything will have to be changed. If you want to buff some characters, you're going to have to nerf some others in order to actually make it so they cannot be countered. So now moving past Season 20 and now going to the future of the game, the new future, I would say past Season 20 is where the new kind of changes started creeping, where, as they mentioned right here, the Recon and Controller class changes were some of the first we tackled in this effort to update the classes. This was in Season 21. And we learned a ton by having them go first, which helped inform us more about the kinds of changes that would make a real impact to the class. And this is a very important point right here. Nothing to share today, but no, we are looking to make sure controllers and recons aren't being left behind either. Now, this is what I've been saying for ages. I think, honestly, controller characters and recon characters are just being left behind. We've had a massive support overhaul. I still think support needs a little bit more, honestly, but Assault and Skirmisher characters have 3 perks each. And, support has 2, but like the other 2 have 2, and they've always had 2 for like the last year or so. So these characters, the recon and the controller characters, have had basically nothing for the past year. So these characters feel very boring right now. It's basically just been the support meta shift up for the support class and Vantage and Watson getting their buffs this season. That's basically been it in the past year for the whole bottom row of characters on the legend screen. So it's very interesting that they are going to be going specifically down the recon and controller class direction again. I hope that they do it justice, though. I think personally they should just go off my concept. I think I might actually send my concept to the developers if I can do, because I do like the concept a lot. Yeah. So go down the same kind of route again. Once again, we have Catalyst. Hasn't seen many changes for some time, and a pick rate outside of professional play has remained very low. Are changes to make her feel more impactful in casual play on the table, or is the team wary of the impact of buff Catalyst could have in high-level play, as she did in the past? So once again, another controller character that just really hasn't seen much attention. So this is the Respawn developer response. Similar to Watson before her updates, Catalyst is definitely someone who sees a lot more play at the high end and comp level more than lower tiers. So there's a lot of opportunity to have her appeal a bit more to all play levels. One interesting note is that the introduction of legend bans in competitive play has been very interesting for us on the balancing side as well. It offered some opportunities for us to be a bit less worried about certain competitive comps, as they don't tend to stick around for very long. I don't have any changes or plans to share at the moment, but as with all our legends, we're always evaluating who's next for us to put our focus into. And this is exactly what I was saying in a previous video of mine, is that right now, the ALGS meta, which was absolutely the guiding light before for all patches in Apex, is no longer a problem anymore. Because before, when things like ALGS was kind of rolling around and, scrims were being taken place and stuff like that, would have, let's say, like the Bangalore Bloodhound meta and stuff like that, and the Octane Revenant meta all the way back then, would have all these different metas, but the problem was that for us casual players, it would stick like that for like seasons, like a season or two. And we wouldn't really see anything change until just, okay, now they are no longer meta, we've just nerfed them both to the ground, and it's just like, okay, right, now I'm going to have to completely relearn some other characters that have just been decided that, okay, these other characters are now meta. And the issue with that is all because the ALGS basically ran everything. That basically everyone was playing, Bangalore and, Bloodhound. These were the meta characters. Because ALGS, everyone's using them. We can't really nerf them because then the ALGS players are going to complain. But now, because of the ban system, as I was saying in the previous video, out of everyone in the game, the people who need to be the most adaptable are competitive players. They should possess that skill to be adaptable, to be able to play any character in the game and do good. And I love how they've had this ban change, because then that means after a game, maybe Catalyst is gone. Alright, okay, no one can play Catalyst. Okay, next game, no one can play Alter. Okay, next game, no one can play Fuse. And it's like, it keeps going like that over and over and over again. So you're going to have to adapt your comp. You're going to have to switch out Fuse for someone else that can possess that role. And that's what it is right now in ALGS. And so what they're trying to say right here is that because of that adaptability that like the competitive players now have and are possessing, that they previously would complain about for all these changes and everything, now they have been forced into adapting all the time. Now they're able to change the meta as much as they want. We could have a new patch every single week, and it doesn't really change much because the competitive players are already adapting all the time. It's just what would happen is they might use, let's say if Catalyst got a massive buff, they might use Catalyst over Watson in the competitive meta before they chose out Watson. So there'll be a lot more teams using Catalyst at the start, then she'll get banned, and then they'll be switching over to Watson. And then she'll get banned, and then there'll be someone else, like Coursing or whatever, that they might switch to. And so that'll be like how the meta would change. And the developers are basically allowed to do the patches whenever they want, without any control of the ALGS really right now, because the teams have now learned to adapt. Obviously, whereas before it would be the same 3 characters in every single game for ALGS, now it's like you can't see the same 3 characters in 2 different matches. now. So it's a really good change, that legend ban system, and obviously that has then had a domino effect onto essentially the game's patches. We're going to have way more consistent patches, and that's the reason why. Okay, so here's another one as well, a very long one here, but appreciate the questions. Ash who? This has to do with the question about Ash. I've never seen her in the games, no, but for real, we are very aware about how commanding Ash has been since her buffs in Season 24, and generally we've taken the approach of leaning into the fun she's brought into the table, and to try and bring other legends up to meet that fun. But we're also aware the more frustrating patterns that she brings as well, especially in the squad. Especially in a squad with other legends like Ballistic and Alter. We don't want to swing the big no fun hammer at her completely, but we're looking at ways to tamper down her power and synergies, as well as counters to movement like Watson's fences. Keep an eye out, tomorrow we might have something coming in the pipe. Obviously that is referring to the Ash nerf that they had, but once again, this is the big problem that I have with Ash, is that unlike Ballistic and Alter, I feel like they are very much catering to Ash, because we've seen in previous ones as well that they try to nerf Ash, but then they just give her like little buffs in ways, like they change a perk out, but they give her actually a better perk than the one that they changed out. And once again, they've moved Ash to the skirmisher class, but now that's then give her the team, like the eyes moving towards Ash one. So now you're going to have Ash with teammates that are all going to be together, and so they're all going to be using the portal way more often now together. So it kind of makes Ash better in some ways as well. So the nerfs that they're doing for Ash are not the same as the nerfs that they're doing for other characters like Alter and Ballistic. So for them to say that, oh, we really want to make it so all the characters are to Ash's level, it's not really the same. And we've definitely seen that whole no fun hammer definitely be swung for characters like Ballistic. And I think that's the big issue as well, is that if they are saying, like there's very much a contrasting view here, is that they say in 1 second that, oh, if we have to, then we will, but they're saying that they don't want to, but then, you know what I mean? So they don't want to use the no fun hammer and kind of just, smack someone into the ground, like what they done to Ballistic, but they definitely could go about the buffs and nerfs a little bit better, I would say. Making it so Ballistic gets slowly nerfed down, but the problem is that they removed one of the most essential parts to Ballistic's kit, and that was the fact that allies got speed boosts in his ultimate. They could have kept that, but just reduced how fast you go, and it's like them little things that could just reduce Ballistic's, appearance a little bit, but just not make him completely useless. That is the whole no fun hammer being used right there. So obviously I have made a video in the past about how I would go about this, and as I said before, I would have like, bi-weekly kind of patches. So every 2 weeks there'll be a new patch, and it would just buff some characters, nerf some characters that have been in the light for a while, buff obviously characters that haven't been in the light for a while. So that's how I would go about it, but it would be every 2 weeks, so the buffs and nerfs would be very slight and gradual. So you'd be kind of like, phasing out one meta and kind of phasing in another without, as they say right here, using the no fun hammer and completely knocking the character out the meta just immediately, like how they've done in the past. I would way rather have it as like a gradual kind of, yep, they're going away now, and then people start realizing, right, okay, maybe I should stop playing Ballistic now because there's other alternative options that just came up gradually that I could be used instead. And I think they're doing an all-right job, but it's just little examples like the Ballistic nerf that they've done that just completely killed them off. And I think that could have been handled a little bit better. Same with Alter as well. I think Alter is still playable, but the removal of the support perks really did remove a massive aspect of her, but she is still very good. So I think that they've probably done Alter correctly, but for Ballistic, they just killed him off, which is really sad. So then they also say, can't speak for any current plans, but we know both 𝗏𝗁𝘁 and 𝗙𝘂𝗰 have been down at the bottom for far too long, so hopefully some updates to share soon. So that's basically confirming that 𝗏𝗁𝘁 and 𝗙𝘂𝗰 will be getting buffs very shortly, which is absolutely necessary. I hope they do buffs that are actually going to be like interesting and like relevant, and I think balanced as well, I think, because obviously we know with 𝗙𝘂𝗰 sometimes he can be annoying to fight against, It tends to be a few different factors, but part of it comes down to their current pick rate and power levels in the meta, and who we want to see rise in their ranks. And part of it comes down to what the theme of the season is and how we can create a cohesive package for that season with everything else coming in. As an example, with the current mid-season split of 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏, there was a big focus on the younger legends and how we can bring them into the spotlight. 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏 and Watson felt like both clear choices in the theme, but also where they were sitting in the pick rates and how they were performing at all levels of play. It felt like a prime opportunity to get Vantage feeling up to date with the game and more in line with her fantasy, and Watson more opportunities to be easier to pick up and play at lower skill tiers, while offering some strong counterplay against the high movement legends in the high tier. So kind of repeating what they said before, but also bringing in Vantage as well. I do think that Vantage is pretty busted right now. She is probably she probably has the longest distance tactical in the game right now for movement, which is very much necessary. Obviously, with her being a sniper character, you need to get that long distance away from an enemy team. So having a tactical like that is very, very good. I would like if you could remove the line of sight thing, developers, because it is quite annoying having a bat set up somewhere on high ground, and just because the bat's just slightly outside of your line of sight, it like no longer works. It's quite annoying. So hopefully they do remove the line of sight thing, so you just start shooting people and then just immediately just use your tactical and just teleport you essentially over to your bat at high ground, so you can use your sniper again. Get a bit of an awareness about what the team's doing. Would be very useful. It would actually allow Vantage to be a bit more of a recon character than what she is currently. And so the last thing I want to go over is this one right here. So with the shift to faster paced passive movement meta, fucking hell, that's hard to say. Ashe's Dash Sparrow's double jump. How do you plan on implementing universal movement for all legends in order to make them as viable? More specifically with controller characters whose playstyle circle around holding ground compared to moving around. I think it's not just about always giving legends new form of movement. That's something we've tried to see how it's felt, and it wasn't fun to play against. It's also about creating opportunities for the other classes to be able to deal with those high mobility characters that makes them feel rewarded and powerful in their own way. And so basically, it's kind of repeating what we've seen before. The controller class is basically the anti-movement character class. I don't know. I feel like they also need some movement in their own right as well. I feel like giving every single other class movement abilities in some way, we'll have the support class with the 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏 with a movement ability, Newcastle with a movement ability, Conduit with a movement ability. We'll have a lot of them characters with movement. Even Lifeline now has a movement ability with the recent rework. We'll have a lot of the characters in the game that have movement. Recon class, Sparrow has a movement ability, Vantage has a movement ability. We have I can't remember the one. Valkyrie that has a movement ability. Who else is it? Yeah, I think that's about it for that class. Even the Assault class, we have a few characters in that class as well that have movement abilities. But then we look at the controller class and they have nothing. And I have been previously on the fence on the kind of making sure characters fit their classes type of thing, but it very much does feel like Respawn is going down this kind of route of okay, it doesn't really matter what class you're in, you can just get movement abilities, and, let's take Sparrow's case, for example. You can have a Tracker Dart, which is a recon ability, you can have a movement ability as a passive, and you can have a very much assault-based ultimate. The fact that you just shoot down a fucking thing and it just does 120 damage to a whole team. It's pretty assault-based. So it very much doesn't really seem like they are going in a direction where they want to, they kind of don't really want to comply to the rules of the game of an assault character as an assault character. As we've seen so recently with Ashe being just kind of moved over to Skirmisher and then Revenant moved over to Assault. It's so easy to move characters between the classes because technically they can fit in any class. You can move Revenant into the Recon class and I think people would still go, yeah, he has that passive where you can highlight people. And then people would say, oh yeah, he's a Recon character now. And so there really is no real barrier between the classes, and I think some people think, oh, that's not a problem, I'm not too bothered, but I think it is a massive thing, and even the developers recognize it with the controller class. They're trying to make this class the no movement, only anti-movement class, but then it makes it very boring for this class, and it's like, I've been on the fence here. I've been on one side where I'm thinking, yeah, we need to make it so that each class fits their role, but then if they're going ahead and they're making it so characters in the recon class and characters in the assault class and characters in the support class all have movement, then why are we excluding the controller class? Why not have the rule fit all of them? So it's a little bit unfair in that regard. And so that's why I'm obviously on the fence. I can see from both sides of the fence, but obviously, in my opinion, I would love it if the characters just stuck with their classes. I think also character perks that allow you to have other class perks is also a massive issue as well, because then technically you're a character that's in two classes, and therefore it makes the other classes redundant. So I do think that needs to go as well. I do think characters just need to stick to the classes and the abilities should reflect that. Yes, have some transition, but make it so most of their abilities are very heavily revolved around their class. That's how I currently think the system should work. And it seems that this developer does acknowledge that with the controller class, but with every other class, obviously it's just going to be the exact same as what it is. So hopefully we do get some movement change or something for controller characters instead of just being the anti-movement character. But yeah, we'll have to see. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video about me just like kind of sharing with you all this information and kind of giving you a bit of a rundown on what the developers kind of thinking at this moment. Because it seems really interesting about where the game's actually going now. So yeah, please let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.